apologetics must be a part of church discipleship.
That's why morality is relative in Americans throughout the West today, because man now determines truth.
And I believe that that's why the nation is in the state it's in, because they don't know the Word of God, and because the church has failed, in a sense, to hold forth the Word of God in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today we welcome back Stephen Arterburn. Do you go by Steve or Stephen?
Both, whatever, just so it's not anything else. But yeah, it's great to be back with you.
Thank you. Well, you have a new book out called 6 Ways for Men to Thrive in Midlife.
Yes, and it's written in a form that I think a lot of men might really enjoy. You know, if my wife were a superhero, she might be called Wonder Word Woman, because she can communicate with all the beauty and I'm bullet point man. That's what I would be. And this is so user-friendly with bullet points and lists and things that you can do. And so a wife who might be married to somebody that has a little bit of a attention problem like me, this would be a great book for him.
What made you decide to write this book in the first place?
I'm in my 60s, so I'm going through this. No, actually, you know, I have been through this, and I know what it's like to reach that point in your life where maybe you wonder, am I more than just a role in this world of husband, or maybe the role of provider? Am I more than just the accomplishments that I've made? Do I have value beyond that? Wow, some things are starting to change, and am I able to deal with these limitations? These are things that guys start to go through, and they can either really throw you off, or you can build on that and create something new out of your life, and as I say here, really start to thrive through and after midlife. And that's what I want to see. And I think most guys have gotten the message that there's just no excuse to shut down over some kind of midlife adjustment or crisis, whatever you want to call it. That now you've got the opportunity to create a second act and a third act. And what I've found is that Act 2 and 3 can be really far greater than the first act. So I just wanted to help men get through some of these things, and quite frankly, help their wives not have to become a mother again. Because, you know, a lot of guys, they fall into this role of a child, and they want to be strong and everything, but then when maybe they don't achieve that perfectionistic ideal, they fall back into this kind of needy place. And then if she isn't aware of what's going on, she'll take on that role of mother, and that works for a mother and son, but when you're husband and wife, not such a good combination to put together.
You start your book by sharing 4 questions that men begin to ask at the halfway point. Can you tell us 1 or 2 of those?
These regrets that I have, what should I do about these regrets? And sometimes we have so much regret that'll lead us into depression. And then sometimes you look at some of the mistakes you've made, or the weak, and you ask, gosh, you know, kind of unconsciously, what can I do to make up for that? And so you see guys doing some really strange things. Like if you have had a job that's not all that important or makes you feel very important, and you look back and you kind of evaluate all that, you might start doing some crazy things to make yourself feel important. You might want to draw the attraction of other women and things like that. So you got to be aware, hey, I'm trying to fix something here, and I'm really stepping out of God's will to do it. I think you have to ask yourself, are there some values that I had in the beginning that for whatever reason I've kind of abandoned those values, and I need to recalculate and get back to those values right here at midlife. So I really think it's a great evaluation point, and if a guy could have this one thing, it would be willingness. If you're willing to do something different, if you're willing to be humble, you can come out so far ahead going through any kind of midlife adjustment or crisis. But sadly, a lot of guys have this stubborn resistance. And here's a statement that doesn't get you anywhere in life. well, this is the way I was when you married me, and this is the way I'm going to be. Boy, what a horrible place to be in your life. And so, what's the opposite of that stubborn resistance? It's humble willingness, willing to do whatever. Or there's another two-word combination, arrogant entitlement. Well, I'm entitled to so much more than I have or should be. And so that can cause us to act out in some pretty unhealthy ways.
Right.
And then here's a big one that I think every guy in midlife needs to look at. Justifiable resentment. I mean, justifiable resentment and radioactive plutonium are two things you don't want to carry around because they will kill you. And a lot of times you think you're so justified. You think, well, you know, my wife doesn't respond to me, or she isn't what I thought, and all this. And you just all into you and what you deserve and what you're entitled to. And that's pretty much the opposite of being a godly man. And so trying to call guys into this time and using it as the excuse to get back to being the man that God called them to be.
Sounds like a really great book. Many men are stumbling to find what it means to embrace masculinity in a culture that seems to not appreciate what men are.
Yeah, I mean, we're all familiar, especially in the area of fatherhood. You know, I grew up with Father Knows Best and My Three Sons and some of these great shows that had some really good father roles. Now, you know, fathers are put down, made to look like they're stupid.
Idiots,
Yeah. And so that translates into the man too. You've got two different things. You've got this one image that a man can't live up to, the he-man. I talk about that in the book, where, you know, most people can't fulfill that. And why would you anyway? And then the other one is kind of this feminized, wimpy type, all feeling kind of thing. And here's the way I describe it. You end up so into your feelings and you kind of so lose your identity. You're kind of like a wet cat laying around on the couch. Well, who wants a wet cat? Nobody. So, you know, we have to go back to what does it mean to be a godly man? And certainly a godly man, if you look at Jesus, he was strong but sensitive. I mean, he endured torture. And yet he was so compassionate and caring. And part of the book really calls men to a compassionate love. You know, we talk about agape love and eros and all these things, but I think we have to get back to a compassionate love. I want a woman to be compassionate about what this guy is going through, but I also want this man to step out of himself and develop some compassion for the woman who is married to him.
Now we got a question. Would it be good for the wives to read this too?
No, it'd be good for her to read it to him. That'd be the good thing. Well, it's certainly if she wants to understand what he is up against, because I don't think she really understands what it does mean to be a man. There's no question in my mind that men have just as many emotions as women. We compartmentalize them, we deaden them, but they're there. And sometimes they don't come out until midlife. So when they start to come out, when they start to surface, a man can really shut down over this flood of emotions that he's never really accepted or dealt with. And so what could be more valuable than to have a woman who is there, who understands this? A lot of women will say to me, he just doesn't share. He just isn't open. And then as I listen to them tell me kind of how she communicates with him, I'm able to say to her, well, look at that. Can you see how that would shut him down rather than open him up? And a woman using the two words, you never, probably is not going to get a very good result from a guy. But here's what I encourage women to do when a man is struggling, is to start with this: I miss you. I miss us. So now you're not saying he's a bad guy, and you're not saying that he needs to be ashamed of himself. You're saying, hey, this is an adult that I miss being with, I want to be connected to, and that's motivational for a guy. We love to be missed. We question whether we are. And so when she says, you know, I really miss you, and I miss us, and I just wonder we could do to get back to that place. And he might, say something rough or whatever, but she could say, well, yeah, I know, but I really want us to be a couple again like we used to be. And maybe that would be the door open that he would get some help. At New Life, we do an intensive, and it's called an intimacy intensive in marriage. We have a lot of people at Midlife. They wake up one morning and they go, what am I doing here? I don't want to be married anymore. I'm so full of anger, bitterness, resentment, disappointment. And 75% of the couples that come, if we don't do something that weekend, they're not going to stay together.
Wow.
They tell us that in a survey that we do. 95% of them stay together and are glad that they did. And really that's supported in secular research that shows a couple that wants to divorce, if they will stay together, 5 years later, they will be so much happier that they did than the people that divorce and think that's going to solve anything. So we do this marriage intensive at New Life, and you can find out about it at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or newlife.com, where we take desperate people, most of them in some kind of midlife or just beyond midlife crisis, and we help them see that you could stay together. And I point out to them that if you were to divorce and you do some kind of online dating thing, you go to match.com, they're going to match you up anyway. You've got the same number of kids, you live in the same neighborhood, so why don't you just stay together and let God do a miracle? That's what I want to see happen. But a lot of guys shut down in midlife. And we'll hear stories of, well, he came home one day and moved into the guest bedroom. And everything died after that. And then she allows that to happen. But after 5 years, she calls and says, what do I do? Well, I want her to call the day he tries to move into the bedroom.
Right.
Because we want to be compassionate, we want to be kind. But there is no place in the Bible that I see that enabling something evil is ever condoned. And taking a marriage and allowing a man to divorce you inside your house, but not fill out the paperwork, that's not good. And in fact, the Bible honors peace makers, not peacekeepers. A lot of times we think, oh, we just keep the peace, he's in the other room. No, when you wink it wrong, it causes trouble. That's what Scripture tells us. So I want to see people be peacemakers. Proverbs says, when you wink it wrong, it causes trouble, but an open rebuke brings lasting peace. So what do you got to do? You got to talk about this stuff. And I think that 6 ways for men to thrive in midlife gives you so many talking points, whether you're the guy or you're the wife. It'll really help you get through it.
That's good. Well, you also have a show called New Life Live.
I do have a show. It's on Sirius XM, channel 131 at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. But we're also on about 200 terrestrial stations. We're on the NRB television network. And if you go to newlife.com, you can click on it and listen to it anytime.
Yeah, we see you on NRB.
Yeah. And it's a live show. We take calls from everybody. We don't know what they're going to ask us. So it's really a wonderful thing that we get to deal with people that are really hurting or struggling or just curious about how to handle the
So
situation.
how did you get into this? Are you a counselor or?
Well, I had so many problems in college. I paid for an abortion when I was in college and was just racked with shame and really almost died from ulcers that I had developed just from the guilt and the shame.
Right.
And I made this 180-degree change, so much so that many of my friends thought I was faking it. They just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And as they saw the consistency, people started coming to me with problems and stuff. And so I went to seminary to study counseling. I got my graduate degree, but I was so fascinated with how to bring people into getting the help. When I needed help, it was back in the day, more so than today, Christians didn't trust counseling, psychologists, and they would quote Freud. Well, he said that religion was like a childhood neurosis, and they thought that characterized everybody using counseling. And then you had psychologists actually saying some things that weren't so complimentary about religion and Christianity. And we had a bunch of weird Christians that kind of proved their point. And so I went from just being a counselor, I wanted to bridge this this gap between here were these Christians that needed help, and here was this help. And so that's when I started back in 1988. I started New Life Treatment Centers, where we did Christian psychiatric treatment. And we did the best treatment those psychiatric hospitals had. We were in secular psych hospitals, and we've been doing this kind of work ever since. And along the way, New Life Radio started, and I'm also a teaching pastor at a big church in Carmel, Indiana, which is one of the great joys of my life. It's called Northview Church. But my mission, because of what I went through and wanting to help other people with their struggle and pain, has been to get folks to see that you're not weird or you're not weak because you have a problem, and there's help that's available that's not going to destroy your faith. In fact, when I started Women of Faith, and we, in 20 years, we had 5 million women come to Women of Faith. But I sat down with those speakers and I said, you have a job to do, and that is to tell your story and to be sure that it includes struggle. Because if you stand up here and act like you've got it together, those women are going to feel worse about themselves. But if you talk about your struggle and that you humbled yourself, you got help in it, that's going to motivate them to get the help they need, and they're not going to feel so ashamed for having problems also. So it's just everything I've done, that's been kind of the mission there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's wonderful that you're reaching out to men in midlife crisis. Is there anything you would like to say in closing before we end?
If a guy is struggling, maybe he finds himself just sad. Well, and it's clinical depression, but he says, guys, I'm just so sad. Or he finds himself, he's a pretty good guy, but now he's not just irritable, but he's kind of lashing out with some anger, not typical. And he's been a really good guy, but now he's kind of attracted to other women, or he's trying to make himself attractive to them, or he's really right into the pornography, or he's doing some irresponsible things financially that just don't make sense. These are indications of a crisis, or you could say a transition. And I would say, one, you could call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE, but here's a book that's going to help you. It's a little pocket manual, you could say. You can stick it in your back pocket, help you get through this, and come out on the other side better, with greater purpose and meaning, and really, as we say, thriving through this, than creating a path of destruction that hurts you, your spouse, and your children. So don't struggle alone, and don't struggle without this little book.
Okay. Again, it's 6 Ways for Men to Thrive in Midlife by Stephen Arterburn. Thank you so much for being our guest again.
Love being here, and let's do it again.
Okay.
All right.
I know